Hello, and well, it's that time of year again where we take a look at what Eugene Systems has been up to over the past year. It's been a pretty eventful year for Steel Division 2 with a lot of new content being added since the game has been released. So, without further ado, let's look over it. So, this is Steel Division 2 in 2020. So to start off the year, Counter Battery would end up getting nerfed, as it was getting a little bit too silly. And also, they would announce the second of the Season Pass DLCs, being The Fate of Finland, which would add Finland into the fray of Steel Division 2, with 3 new Finnish divisions and 3 new Russian divisions, as well as a pretty large army general campaign and more historical scenarios. February would see the introduction of the auto-deploy feature, allowing you to easily deploy your army in the click of a button. It's probably a feature that's not used a lot by more veteran players, but it's definitely a good feature to have, as if you're new to the game, it can be pretty overwhelming having to spend 750 points in a few minutes and figure out who is going to go rare. And they'd also announce Destruction Mode. Now, I don't know who really wanted Destruction Mode. I understand back in the War Game series it was a pretty popular game mode to play. I've never personally been a big fan of it, as it really is just a campy, killy mess, rather than more fighting over objectives and areas. If you like Destruction Mode, I'd like you to tell me right in the comments. I'm generally curious here. March would finally see an announcement of Multiplayer Army General, allowing you to play Army General campaigns either in a cooperative fashion or in a versus fashion against your friends. And also The Fate of Finland would finally be released in this month. I personally found that The Fate of Finland, out of the 3 other historical Season Pass DLCs, was probably the best out of all of them. The new Finnish divisions really added a lot to the table, and they're definitely fun to play as the more smaller scale infantry squads and kind of makeshift tactics you have to use, as you have a lot of makeshift equipment and hand-me-downs. And also the Russian divisions that are added as well were pretty fun, as they were also pretty second-rate divisions. And they would also introduce 2 new income types into the game. April would see the announcement of some much needed army general improvements, which definitely improve the quality of life of the game mode by quite a bit. They'd also announced that they are finally working on some urban maps, which has definitely been a community requested feature since the game has been released. Though by time of this recording of the video, these maps are still not out yet. Also, Destruction Mode was released this month. May would see the rather unexpected announcement of more SD44 divisions being added into SD2. It would be released later next month to commemorate the 76th anniversary of D-Day. This is rather surprising, as I think we all thought, yet the Normandy divisions that we did get were going to be the only ones that we're ever going to get, and we almost have all of the baseline SD44 divisions now in Steel Division 2. And with this, recurring trend, I'll see you guys next year for the rest of the SD44 divisions. June would end up seeing the roadmap being updated, with some major goals being to improve the infantry combat, as it's gotten a little bit spammy, to improve the armoured warfare combat, because it's kind of gotten also spammy, and also improving Army General as a whole. And we'd also see an announcement for the 3rd and final of the Season Pass DLCs, Black Sunday, finally introducing Romania into the fray. It would have 6 new divisions, 3 Romanian, 3 Russian, as well as 2 Army General campaigns, and it would be released later on in the summer. July would end up seeing a live Q&A being hosted by Vulcan Hasty Gaming with some of the members of Eugene Systems. It's definitely very good to see a sort of communication with the community, as they went over quite a lot of topics within this Q&A, and Vulcan did a lovely job of hosting them. Some of the major key things that they talked about is that they're working on a map editor. They can't really add matchmaking to the game, as there's too little of a player count to properly facilitate it. They're gonna focus on rebalancing some of the flag locations on certain maps. They're working on trying to fix the infantry spam. SD3 won't come out anytime soon. Their main concern is working on Steel Division 2, and they're just gonna be continue self-publishing for the time being. July would also see an announcement of the Nemesis DLC system, a new way of adding more minor divisions into the game that don't warrant an entire season pass or giant campaign TM. Essentially, it allows the community to vote for which new divisions they want to see added into the game, as they focus on divisions on more minor events which happened in the Second World War. And the first Nemesis Division DLC would actually be free, introducing the 16th Panzer Division with King Tiger H's finally being in the game, and the 97 Guard Rifle Division, which has big stonking IS-2s. In August, Black Sunday would finally be released with all the new divisions, as well as Army General campaigns along with it. There's also quite a big patch note during the release, but two of the major changes was that they changed the bomber availability across the board, and they nerfed stroke DP so not everybody is running around with an SVT. September would see the Lvov Offensive winning the second Nemesis DLC vote, which I think is to no one's surprise as it included the 20th Panzer Grenadier Division, which has elephants and tiger peas, which pretty much concludes the 10v10 Axis Holy Trinity of divisions which you want to bring. October would see the third Nemesis DLC division being announced, which would be the Battle of Rimini, adding the second New Zealand division as well as the first Fallschirmjäger division. Eugene Systems would also release a community update post talking about the changes which they risk to implement into the game soon, such as improving the tank combat, making reconnaissance actually useful, and to deter infantry blob spam by making machine guns much more deadly. It would also end up rebalancing all the incomes. In November, it'd see the recon changes actually being implemented, and they did a pretty damn good job of it, as recons are actually useful in Steel Division 2. You can use a 2-man recon squad and spot enemy anti-tank guns before you charge up a bunch of tanks across an open field. It was definitely a pretty big improvement to the game, as a lot of the 1v1 replays I was seeing, most people would just not take recon units because it was worthless. But now we're starting to see a little bit of a change in that, which is lovely. In December, we'd see the fourth of the Nemesis DLC divisions being announced, as the winner was Storm in Toulon, and in the first French division, as well as the Vertigungen Beric Toulon. There's also one final patch before the end of the year, changing all commanders into A phase, decreasing vehicle optics overall, and also nerfing a lot of Axis recon vehicles. I also want to give a big shout out to pretty much everyone who's ran tournaments over this past year, such as the first SD Championship, the SD League, the Terrible Divisions Tournament, etc, etc. There's probably some others that I've missed as well, big and small. I'm seriously appreciative personally from these tournaments, as they help keep the community active, and also they keep me in a job, as they give me very good replays to actually put on my channel and Castriv. And that pretty much summarizes the year for Steel Division 2 in terms of content. It's been a pretty interesting run, I have to say. On one hand, the amount of post-launch content and DLC for the game has been insane compared to previous installments. For example, currently are 12 historical scenarios, 8 Army General campaigns, which are pretty large in breadth and scope, and 56 divisions in the game, which is double the amount of divisions that were in SD44, and a lot of those SD44 divisions are now in SD2. And with the amount of content in SD2, it does feel like Eugene is trying to make what seems to be the ultimate coverage of World War II with such a large breadth of countries and divisions and units available in the game. It's pretty insane. They've kind of gone for what I personally see a Wargamer Dragon approach of let's just try to add as many countries and units as we possibly can. And that's awesome. I love it. One of the things I completely adore about Eugene Systems games and just SD2 as a whole is that diversity of units. It's not just like your regular World War II game where you're just playing with the standard army equipment that you usually see. Instead, you have all sorts of varying divisions and interesting units and tactics and minor countries that you can play with, and they're pretty well detailed in terms of their historical accuracy as well as just the models themselves. However, on the other hand, I would say that the general gameplay and balance has gotten pretty stale for SD2. Yes, there has been some pretty significant changes and patches since the game has been released, but the gameplay still culminates into just spamming the opponent to death with a bunch of unfettered infantry and cheap medium tanks. The actual meta I've seen hasn't really changed that much since release. I've already made a video discussing my complaints with the game, and even though that video was made a few months before, I still think a lot of those points are still very relevant to how the game is currently played. But even what I perceive to be balance problems, Steel Division 2 is actually doing pretty good in terms of a player count perspective. It hasn't really reached anything crazy high as we might imagine, but in terms of an average, it's doing slightly better than what SD44 was in terms of player count around its time. And hopefully throughout next year we'll see some more sweeping changes into the game. As we've seen with the recon changes, Eugene Systems can actually make some pretty good changes to their game, as they made recon from a useless aspect to now a very useful tool that you actually need to use now, which is quite nice. And hopefully if the tank changes, as well as the infantry machine gun changes, it will make SD2 a better game. I still think they need to retweak in terms of availability and veterancy across the board to make the game a little bit less spammy, but that's just a personal preference of mine. If currently you're one of the people who are very dissatisfied with the current state of the game, I would highly recommend trying out the Red Storm mod on the Steam Workshop. It's a complete overhaul of the game, it changes bloody everything about it, and pretty much all the issues that I've listed in the past are fixed in this one mod. There's a lot of new stuff to it. They completely changed how certain units work, and they even added some new divisions, so not all the divisions are in it, as every single division had to be reworked to work with this mod. It personally revitalized my enjoyment of the game. It makes it a bit more like SD44 in terms of unit availability and the importance of veterancy. It's a lot of fun. I would highly recommend it, and I'm looking forward to see how this mod develops over the coming months. And well, that pretty much ends off the year. I want to thank everybody who's been watching my videos over this past year. I greatly appreciate it. I'm continuing with SD2 content for the time being, and yeah, I don't really have much else to say. I hope you guys have a lovely New Year's, and as usual, please just take it easy.